Hello, folks. If you're watching this, that means that you are watching the Creative Outlet Podcast episode 4 shortly. However, I just wanted to quickly address prior to this episode airing the circumstances surrounding it. So this episode has been in production since about, mid-April of 2020. And I don't know if anybody's heard of this thing going around during that time called a, pandemic. That's the word, pandemic. So, as you can see, I'm back in the good old home studio. There's been some movement going around in here. I don't quite know if I'm to a finalized setup. Looking at that poster in the back as one primary example of something I may want to change. But some of the things in this episode may be out of date, particularly the extended coverage of Animal Crossing New Horizons before it comes out, but suffice it to say, it is going to be here now, and I will be working pretty quickly on getting the next episode up and running as soon as possible after this one gets released with its subsequent portioned out segmented versions. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the show. It's been a long time coming. Needless to say, the more of the circumstances surrounding that will likely be touched upon in the introduction for episode number 5. But regardless, things happened. I'm ready to get you into this next episode, number 4, so please enjoy the show. Thank you. Alright, and it is officially episode number 4 of the Creative Outlet Podcast, and here I am. It is I, your host, Brandon Pudwill, for this C.O.P, this C.O.P. The date that I am recording this is March 12th, 2020. It is a Thursday. I am going to be giving us our introduction here. And as always, we'll be doing 4 topics today. I'm thinking this is going to be a bit of a longer show because I have 2 particularly long topics, and I have 37 pages of notes. So I am, I'm just ready to get into what we're doing here. So how do I want to start? What do I want to talk about in this intro? I guess I should give some reflections from episode 3. That episode, at least as of the date I'm recording this, is yet to have any segments edited yet, but that's because I've been particularly busy on other projects, and that's something that I want to work on in the next week. And I'll explain why next week is important as I go on here in this intro. And, I wish it could have been longer, I guess, looking back on episode 3, because it was like an hour and 10-ish minutes, and I don't know why each episode has been getting shorter so far, but it seemed like for the last 4 topics that I covered, being Google Stadia, scalping, some of the psychology of collecting, and of course, mi español, I don't know, I guess I just didn't have as much prepared for them as I thought when I was writing them, and not to mention, I've been under a bit of a time crunch, because I spend a lot of time on assignments and other things that I need to do that, I don't know, maybe I just didn't want to spend as much time on that podcast as I could have, which is unfortunate, but hopefully that's made up today. I doubt we'll get to 2 hours. If I do, oh boy, that'll be something, but let's just get through each segment here first. And I guess looking now that I've done a whole trilogy of episodes, and now I'm getting into the quadrilogy, I wish I could have covered more news in that episode, but obviously the major problem with that is it took so long to come out, and that's obviously been a problem with a bunch of these is I just don't have the time to do the episodes timely enough for a news topic. Although I'm going to try today. I'm going to release something that, even though it's a little bit of old news, it's still going to be relatively relevant. Plus, it's a bit more of an opinion type piece than it is a news piece. But I am going to go over a bunch of information. And good thing is, pretty soon here, it's already mid-March, it'll be June, it'll be summer, I'll have all the time in the world to work on this. So, speaking of which, I guess I should discuss how things are going to be going as I get closer to the end of this semester. But before I get into summer, I'd actually like to give an update on the present, because there's a bunch of new information that's come out. So I'm sure, if you're watching this in the present, that is, March of 2020, you know that there's a certain terrible... people are thinking of it as a pandemic. I don't know if it's going to be quite that bad. I'm not fully convinced. But there's a certain terrible CV going around, if you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to mention it for fear that who knows what could happen to this if I just happen to mention the name of the condition in a random couple of seconds. And so because of that, for my university, spring break was supposed to be between March 14th, 2020, which is a Saturday, until March 22nd, which is the following Sunday, with classes reconvening that Monday. Let me just make sure I have that date absolutely right, that it would be a Monday. We're supposed to reconvene on March 23rd, but the break has not been extended, but all classwork has been moved online until April 10th. And in line with that, any students in the university residence halls are to return their keys and vacate the premises, with a few specific exceptions, until April 10th. So, I haven't exactly decided what I want to do with regards to this podcast until that date, because it would be really great to be able to continue this, but I already am going to have to bring back a whole bunch with like a tote of... I want to bring home my bedding, get that washed, and I want to bring home my clothes, because, it's better to get things clean for free like that than it is to spend the $2.50 it costs to do laundry here. Seriously, if anybody from a college is listening to this that has any power over residence life, you need to do things to make it more appealing for students to want to stay in the residence halls, unless you make it mandatory for them to stay there, which is a whole separate can of stupid worms. But one of the things you can do to make students want to go to the university housing is to make costs like that not exist, or at least be significantly less than $2.50. But that's beside the point. The point is, I'm going to have to go home, and I don't quite know if I will bring my microphone and the camera or not yet. Ideally, I will. But I'll see if I even have time to work on these aside from editing and preparing the next episode until I'm back here. And obviously that's quite unfortunate. But my hope is to bring along the microphone and bring along the camera, because those would just be nice things to have in case I do happen to have the time to record an episode while I'm at home. But we'll see what happens. Short of any additional extension to it, I figure I'll be back on track to start recording by then once again. Of course, it doesn't matter much anyway, because then 3 weeks after that, I'm going back home again because the semester will be over. And with that, I suppose it would be best, since I will be finished at the beginning of May, which is coming up right after that, to give a discussion about what is going to be happening between mid-May and August. So for starters, I should be back to recording in the location I was in episode 1, back home. Of course, that comes with the major flaw that I will have to get up in order to hit the record button, but maybe I will be able to figure out a way around that. Potentially getting it's like I've seen people use like a clicker of some kind. That would be good. But really, the main problem with summer isn't going to be recording and writing, because, like I said, I'm gonna have all the time in the world to do that. Anytime I'm not working or doing something to like take the edge off is gonna probably be spent on this. The problem though is going to be editing. So as I've been here in college, I can just go to the library, grab a laptop with Adobe Premiere on it, and edit. And that's how I'm able to include the nice looking text, and how I have things like the logo at the beginning and the end. Because my personal computer is a video potato in that it cannot likely support Premiere, and I don't exactly have any computers around at home that I can just use that have that kind of power and have Premiere on it. So, in preparation for that, that's why the segments from episode 3 have yet to been edited, and why I'm recording this right now, because I want to try to edit this episode using the tools that I have available to me. And in this case, I was looking around. I was like, what are some, I looked at my computer specs, because you can just do that on Windows, and I was looking for a software that should be able to run on my computer that is ideally free and open source, because college kids like me are poor in the sense that we don't have the money to purchase editing software necessarily. And so currently I'm looking at using the VSDC free video editor. I have yet to use it. If there are any flaws with it, of course I'll find out when I edit it again, or when I edit using that software. Really, the only thing that I'm concerned about looking at it is with the text. Like, the fades for visuals and audio, that's a standard feature on any editing software, so I don't expect them to work any differently. Those will be fine. It's all the text, because I use a particular font. I use there's one letter. I want to make sure I say it right. I don't know if it's Eris or Arius ITC Light font, which is available in the, I believe the university Windows computers have the 2018 Adobe Premiere on it. So yeah, it looks like on here it is Eris, like eras, multiple eras ITC. So ideally I should be able to, that would be on the software. If it's not, I'm going to have to figure that out. Because I would like to continue using that font. I'm not ready to do a a font rebranding for this show. I mean, worst case scenario, I figure I have to use a different font in the middle of the episodes, and then because I want to keep the simple black background with the white logo at the like just the white text at the start. Because even if it is simple, I feel like it looks just sophisticated enough to be like a podcasty logo. But aside from text, making episodes in every other respect should be much, much easier in the summer. And that's a big plus. And in fact, when it comes to looking at how the summer is going to work for this show, the plan for me is to have everything split up over 2 weeks. So like 1 week is an editing week, and then the other week will be a recording week. I should have said that in the opposite order. 1 week is recording week, the following week is editing week, and then going back and forth and back and forth. But that's for entirely separate family-related reasons that I don't really want to discuss here. But that it at least has that benefit that I should be able to have that consistent recording and editing schedule, short of me getting super duper lazy, which I don't plan on having happen. But we'll see how work and other things end up for me. Otherwise, that's about all I have to say in this intro. I'd actually like to preview the topics for this episode, because that just makes sense. I am going to be looking at finally doing, I know I say finally, and it's only episode 4, the Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. Not quite rant, but a little bit more than diatribe. I'm just going to have a talk about it, because there's a little bit of news that makes it relevant once again to me, so I figured now is the best time than any to discuss it. The thing that I referenced earlier in this intro about something that's kind of timely is we're going to be talking about the Animal Crossing New Horizons Direct, because I have some opinions on it, including some opinions that I don't know if everyone's going to like. But if I end up being wrong and I think other things by the time I get the game, trust me, I will update my opinions, even if that means I have to eat crow. It is my favorite bird to eat. I say semi-facetiously, because it is simply a figure of speech. And that's going to be likely the longest segment on here. The third thing we will be talking about, if I could get past the notes I have for this segment. Oh, yes. Speaking of university, it's not going to be a problem for a while, but I have some problems here with the internet and gaming that I would like to discuss, because I'm sure I'm not the only one who is having problems trying to play video games online at their university. But I just kind of wanted to describe what's happening for me. And then finally, my requisite getting out of gaming topic, I've decided to do a retrospective on some of my favorite animation. I would like to do a retrospective on my time with the Warner Brothers Looney Tunes, because that has been one of my favorite forms of media during my childhood and even into today. So with that all said, I am ready to get going into some topics. This is going to be a great creative outlet podcast. So anybody that has gone back and listened to the first episode of this podcast knows that I don't necessarily have a great relationship with a particular game, and that game is Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. In fact, I'm pretty sure at some point or another in each episode I have brought it up at least once, Maybe I didn't in one episode, but I know for sure I've referenced it at least twice. But in all fairness, I should get out of the way. I don't hate the game. I don't think it's terrible. In fact, I distinctly remember in June of 2019, I went to my local in-town game shop and I was looking around. I was in the market for a new game. I was like, God, I really want to play a kart racer, but I'm just not in the mood for Mario Kart. So I remember talking to the guy behind the counter and asking him, okay, which game should I get? Which game is better, Crash Team Racing or Team Sonic Racing? Because that was the other mascot kart racer that came out for current gen consoles at the time. And even though he liked Sonic more as a character, he thought that CTR would be the better game. Now, of course, he was basing it off of the original CTR on the PlayStation. And to be fair, it's like, yeah, he's probably right. Not that I thought that Team Sonic Racing would necessarily be a terrible game, but, and I have it now, and I haven't really played it very much. It's still a fine game. It's not better than Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, I would say, but I probably should put a little bit more time into it too. And so I basically came out of that conversation buying CTR. I was like, all right, I'm convinced. I'm going with Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. And then I went home and I played it a ton. I really enjoyed it. In fact, I finished the adventure mode 100% within like the first couple of weeks of owning the game. I'm not at 101%, so I'm still missing the one nitrous oxide costume because I just can't figure out what have I not done to get 101%. But I will figure it out. I maybe it's getting all of the gold relics in the adventure. I'm not sure. I don't know. But suffice to say, like I said, I finished the adventure mode in like the first couple of weeks that I owned it, and I cannot tell you the last time that I finished a game that fast. Like it takes me very long to finish a lot of the games I own, but that was one that I was just like done pretty much instantly. And yeah, sure, I had a bunch of stuff to unlock through the pit stop, which will be a topic of conversation here, but I'd like to finish this story first. But it's like, I finished the adventure. I wanted to play a little bit more online, but after that, I was about done. I basically wanted to do the same thing that I do with any Mario Kart game, which is now that I've done all of the single player, I just want to play online, and ever I'm like, I want to play Mario Kart. That sounds like fun. But then, in July 2019, all of a sudden, there was the announcement of the Nitro Tour Grand Prix, which is where all of the problems started happening. And it is in fact the reason that I wanted to discuss this today, is in mid-February, which I know is a month ago now, and in fact it's I would hazard a guess to say that my inspiration for this is almost over now. Activision announced the final Grand Prix, which is great for me because I have quite a bit to say about them and why exactly I did not like the Grand Prix system that Activision added to Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. Full disclosure, I did not play that final Grand Prix, and I barely played through half of the second to last one because by that point I was officially decided for my mental health that I was done. That I could not do this anymore. But let's just give a little background here. What is a Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled Grand Prix? Now, it is not the same thing as a Mario Kart Grand Prix. In Mario Kart, a Grand Prix is where you race 4 races and win a cup, but not in CTR Nitro Fueled. No. That mode was already in the game as the Cup race, in which they added 2 new cups as more tracks continued to be added. But the Grand Prix in this game is a month-long event in which Beanox, the developers, added a brand new track some number of new characters. It was usually 3, but there were a couple of times where it was 4. There was like twice where it was just 1. There will be new character costumes themed around the theme of the event. There will be new carts, new tires, new paint jobs, and new decals for carts added to the pit stop shop. And each month, players also have to complete a nitro gauge by completing challenges of varying difficulty in which they earn nitro, which are just points. So, Brandon, what is the problem here? Why would anybody be upset with having more in-game content? And, honestly, if it was that simple, I would be super happy, right? Like, I'm getting free content added to my $60 purchase every single month. That sounds great, especially in a day and age where, we mostly have to pay microtransactions. Oh, let's put a pin in that. And pay for DLC for games that it costs in the long run even more than the game. I was like, that sounds great. That sounds like a no-brainer. But first, I would like to explain some other aspects of the game and the Grand Prix system to make sense of why I was not so fond of this system. So first, what is the Pit Stop Shop? The Pit Stop is a shop where each day characters, character costumes, carts, and other things are rotated daily for set prices. Although there's also bundles that could include a character and a cart and it's paint jobs, right? But the bundle prices depend on what is the bundle, and some bundles are the only way to get certain content, which will be semi-important here. And then by finishing races in Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, you obtain some odd number of Wumpa coins. Wumpa is in reference to the Wumpa fruit from the main games. But Wumpa coins are the in-game currency, of which in a single-player race, the most you can get is 80 coins. Now, items cost, depending on what you want, somewhere between like a couple hundred coins for a decal or a paint job, to 1,500 coins for a character and 2,500 coins for a costume. But racing online gets you significantly more coins because during the first 30 minutes of playing online, which thankfully the timer only runs when you're in a race, so it doesn't include getting into menus, waiting around in lobbies, during that first 30 minutes, you receive 5 times the coins, and of course you get more depending on how well you place. Which, just as an aside, this naturally presents a problem for players who do not have a subscription to whatever online service their system uses, because this is a current-gen console game, so in order to play it online, you need to have either a PlayStation Network account for PS4, an Xbox Live subscription for the Xbox One, or, of course, a Nintendo Switch Online subscription to play online on the Switch. So if you're playing without that, you have to deal with chump change for your coins. But you can also, as of August of 2019, buy Wumpa coins through microtransactions on your console of choice. Strange, right? Why was this not in the game in June, when the game came out? Now, if you want to have a comprehensive video describing the issue with the microtransactions, I would highly recommend checking out Cat Icarus's 2 videos on them. He's a very entertaining guy. I do quite enjoy what he produces. Those 2 videos, even though they weren't, exactly what he does for videos normally, were still highly entertaining, even though they were more podcasty, let me rant about this thing sort of video. But he has 2 very lovely videos on why the microtransactions are a problem and the problems that it shows in the pit stop shop, such as how there was a bundle during the second Grand Prix, which is the I want to say it was just called the Prehistoric Grand Prix, but I want to make sure that it is honestly that simple. No, the Back N Time Grand Prix. They love those N puns in crash-related media. The Back End Time Grand Prix, one of the bundles was like a cart, paint job, and a decal, and Mad Scientist Crash for 9,900 coins. And the biggest bundle of coins you can get on any of these stores is 11,000 because it's 10,000 plus a bonus 1,000 for free. So effectively, you're buying 11,000 coins for $10. $10. Which is not exactly an appealing price for that little tiny amount that can buy you a grand total of one bundle with a character, a cart, a paint job, and a decal. Let me just make sure I have that right. It should be $10, but I want to be thorough on this. In the meantime, I guess I'll go on to describe the Nitro Gauge. So like I said, the Nitro Gauge is it's a bar, and you need to obtain first like 5,000 or 7,000 some odd points. And then you need to obtain 17,000 points. It's like they go in 3 different tiers. It's like you finish the bronze tier by getting that 5,000 coins. You finish the silver tier by getting that 17,000. And by the end, you need to obtain 42,000 points, which is a lot. That is quite a bit. Well, okay, actually, before I get too far, so I'm looking on the the PlayStation Store here, and no, the game is $40. I don't know why I was thinking $60. It is a $40 game, so you did not pay full price for the game, but still, $40 is a lot more money than free, or, even, God, like a $10 game, a $5 game. But if you got the nitrous oxide bundle, that was $60. That might have been where I was getting it from. And yes, the 10,000 plus 1,000 bonus coins is $9.99. Although it appears, at least on the PlayStation Store, there are even more bundles now that are even larger, where you can get 20,000 coins with 4,000 bonus for $20. Or 30,000 with 10,000 bonus coins, so effectively 40,000 coins for $30. That's a lot of money, especially for a $40 game. And then, so the problems here with this Nitro Gauge and the pit stop shop from the Grand Prix was that any items in the pit stop and on the Nitro Gauge were only available for the month of the Grand Prix. Now, in fairness, eventually, the items from each Grand Prix, for sure the shop items, I can't confirm on the Nitro Gauge items, but at least the shop items would be re-added to the pit stop at a later time. But for sure with the start, it was never certain that would happen. And like I said, I don't even know what happens if you miss Nitro Gauge items before a new Grand Prix, and like the amount of time between the original Grand Prix and the items being re-added was like 2 or 3 months, so that's another part of why everything seemed like it would be in limbo. So in other words, if you don't play during that month, you are liable to miss out on content and not be able to get it. Now, I know there are tons of people who are like, well, I don't really care about having everything. And this is ultimately a personal problem of mine as well, that I like to get all the things if I can. But I don't want to commit the time to playing the game for, let's see, it's March right now. June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. I don't want to commit to playing the game for 10 straight months, pretty much full time. And I say full time because effectively this turns what should be a fun game into work. Instead of playing the game how I want to play it, I'm playing how the game wants me to. And I know there's a ton of people who are super into the game that just like eat, breathe, and drink Crash Team Racing, and they play nothing except for it, and they relish in having these Grand Prix to have their skills continue to be tested. And I'm super happy for them. I encourage them to keep playing. If it makes them happy, I would love to have them keep playing the game. But it does not make me happy because everything is built on this time limit. And it's that concept of when a game turns into work that I get upset with it. So for the first like 6 Grand Prix, I already mentioned 2 of them. There was a Spyro one, too. There was a Halloween-themed one. There was a neon circus-themed one. And then there was a Christmas one. There was... I want to say... January was the post-apocalyptic themed one. And now this one's like a space-themed one. That was going on between... The final one between mid-February and March. But in those first 6 ones, I played them through to completion, at least completion in air quotes, I say, because I got all of the characters by completing the gauge and getting as many of the items as I could in the shop. And I tried to get all of the carts, and that was about it. So I didn't even get everything. I didn't even bother with any of the paint jobs or any of the tires or anything like that unless I specifically needed them to get a nitro boost because you could get a bonus percentage of nitro points if you had certain items on your cart, which meant you had to grind to try to get certain items. It was a mess. But basically what's happening here regardless is that I just kept playing a game that I no longer wanted to play because I wanted to get as many of the items as I could. And even getting the characters and the carts and the costumes still took me most of the month. I can't imagine how long it would take if you actually, honestly, tried to get every single thing from the Grand Prix, especially because before I started the Grand Prix, I didn't even have all of the items in the base game. So I still have items or at least costumes and carts from the base game that I don't have unlocked because I was always focused on I have to get the new item before it's gone from the shop. I have to get the new item before it's gone from the shop. So when the Rustland Grand Prix came around, that's the post-apocalyptic one I mentioned, and the current Gasmoxia Grand Prix, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I abandoned it. And I honestly have no idea when I would want to play Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled again. And it's sad because this is something that should have made me want to play, but the fact that they just wanted to retain me as a player seemingly permanently instead of keeping me for like a few minutes every month or so isn't enjoyable, at least to me. I look at, just for comparison, how, say, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate handles player retention through its DLC and by adding spirits. In fact, there's going to be a new spirit event this weekend of March 14th. They're going to be adding some Ring Fit Adventure spirits. And, the spirits like this are added like every month, maybe a few weeks. And it's 1 spirit, maybe 4 spirits maximum. And once you beat it, you're good to go. You're all done. And even though said spirits may only be available for like a couple of days over the weekend, since all you need to do is win a couple of spirit battles, it's not all that intrusive, right? It's like, okay, I can go on to Smash, play those battles. I might have to wait for it to actually come around, or I can, mess with the spirit board to try to get it to come around sooner. But once it's done, it's done. And it takes like no more than an hour. And then similarly, DLC fighters release every couple of months, especially now with the Fighters Pass 2 that I talked about briefly in the third episode. No, wait, it was the second episode. What am I saying? Second episode. Check out that one for that segment, the Byleth segment. But the content from those releases are permanently in the game. There is no time limitation. You want to get the character and the stage and the spirits for the DLC's Fighter Spirit Board, you have them. So that should be my spiel on CTR, unless I think of anything else to talk about. I feel like, for the most part, I've gone through my main issues. It's really, honestly, if it were like, we're adding this Grand Prix for you to complete, and it's like, if you remember, like, Hyrule Warriors, for example, and, I mean, obviously now it's been re-released twice on the 3DS and on the Switch having every single piece of content now, because it is the Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. Every time with DLC, they added a new adventure mode map, where you had challenges on, like, a grid. If it was just like that, where it's like, we're going to add this every month to give you new challenges to do for items from this themed Grand Prix, that'd be fine. That'd be perfect. That's exactly what I'd want. It's like, I can do it when I want. I'll just get it done whenever. And then I will go through an order, complete every single Grand Prix, and I will be, peachy keen, super happy. That is not how it went. And ultimately, while I'm happy for those who love how content is releasing, I have finally accepted that I need to stop playing it. And that is okay. Moving on to the behemoth Animal Crossing New Horizons Direct segment. Okay, viewers and listeners, get ready. This is likely going to be the longest Creative Outlet podcast segment, potentially for a long time, or of all time. I don't know which is going to come sooner, likely just for some time. But if you'll remember back to the very first episode, which you should certainly watch if you have not done so, I gave a discussion on Animal Crossing New Horizons for the Nintendo Switch with the information we knew up to that point. But on February 20th, 2020, a lot of twos, an Animal Crossing New Horizons Nintendo Direct aired, showing off a whole lot of new things about the game. And though I could have covered it in the last episode of this podcast, I wanted to give myself some time to really think about the things that were revealed in it. And to be fair, like I said, today is March 12th. Tomorrow, a bunch of people are going to be getting their Animal Crossing New Horizons consoles, which is a topic I briefly covered in the scalping segment as a personal story about it. So you should check that out as well if you have not watched episode 3, or that segment if you prefer. But since then, there's also been a playable demo at PAX East, and the game's coming out in 8 days from my recording this, and while I know that there's plenty of people who are interested in all those little tiny details, and they're going to know everything super soon, I just want to focus on what we learned from that Direct as opposed to PAX, because there's just so many tiny things that we could dive into there that it's not worth it to me. I'm gonna know this soon when I inevitably get the game, and that's way more time that I have to spend on research, and I don't have the time to dedicate to that, unfortunately. I will have linked the Nintendo Life article covering a bunch of those little findings for those who are interested. And of course, a quick YouTube search for the PAX East demo will show off a whole lot of information. Even then, pretty soon everybody's going to know it because they're going to own the game. So every mystery is going to be solved. So think of this almost more as like a pre-review of the game. Like, I'm just looking at, what did the direct lay out? What do I think about that before I actually play it? I just like to look at the concept, to look at the ideas. And then when the game comes out, or at least, when I get it, hopefully I should be able to go back and, having played it, give a full, high-quality review, even if that means I need to go back and be like, yeah, I remember that segment where I discussed the direct. I was wrong. But with that said, I am ready to discuss the entirety of everything that was discussed in that direct. Keep in mind, I'm on page 8 right now. I have a grand total of 37 pages for this set of notes. Past notes were like 20 pages, 15 pages. I mean, let's put it like this. I filled up a whole brand new bottle of water just for this segment, and I would not be surprised if this segment goes over 30 minutes, and then there's a little choppy editing in the middle because of that, because I need to go between, because the video is going to stop at around 30 minutes. I'll probably pause it before that happens. I'll find a good place to stop. So I apologize in advance if there's some choppiness or if the camera gets just slightly enough off angle to be annoying, because I know that can certainly happen. But with that said, let's get into the information. And to be honest, there were quite a few things that everybody seemed to fall in love with in the direct that I actually didn't love that much. A lot of the things that people are super hyped for, including some of like the big things. And of course, after I get the game, if I end up loving these things that I said I wouldn't, I'm going to discuss it because I have the humility to know what's wrong. I'm not going to take down this segment or this full episode because I don't agree with myself anymore. I'm going to say what I say here, and it's going to be on the record. It's that simple. So yeah, let's go over every major element. So as with past Animal Crossing games, you get to decide which town layout you want. In past games, you would be on the train or in the taxi or in like a car or something, and you'd get out of someone talking to you. It could be Cap'n. It was Rover in Animal Crossing on the GameCube and in New Leaf. And you just get to pick your town layout. That's what you would have unless you reset it. In this case, you pick it while you're on in the airplane, and that just makes sense because it's the system they've used since the beginning. It's not like it's a broken system in need of fixing. But a new twist added to that is that you get to pick between living in the northern or southern hemisphere of Earth. So events that take place during the summer in the northern hemisphere will be snowed over when you're living in the southern hemisphere, and vice versa. It's like Christmas will be summery in the southern hemisphere in December, which makes sense because that's how the real world works. And you don't have to pick the hemisphere that you live in real life as well, which to me it's kind of a superfluous feature. Like, it's great that it's there for people who want to switch up their hemisphere and what weather there is, but it isn't something that I think is going to make or break anyone's experience. Unless in past entries players in the southern hemisphere played with weather only in the northern hemisphere. If it was like, it's looking like Halloween, late October out here, and it's like super green and lush here in the southern hemisphere, but it looks all dead in Animal Crossing. If it's the case that is how it worked, then allowing players to pick their hemispheres to make sure that everyone is properly represented, that's a great thing to me. But to me, as somebody who lives in the northern hemisphere and is likely going to pick that, it's just kind of superfluous. Like, it's great that it's there. Don't think it's all super important, but it's a fun, harmless addition. And if anything, it could be useful if there have been problems with representing the Southern Hemisphere in the past, or vice versa. Then they talk about the seasons, which look about the same as ever. And obviously I discussed a little bit of that in the first episode with the screenshots, looking at things like how there were leaf piles in the fall. The events change as the seasons change, as do the materials that you find to craft this. Craft with a T at the end. Like in the winter, we got to see a villager pick up an ornament that fell off of a pine tree. And the narrator talks about things like finding seeds and mushrooms in the fall, which isn't too different because already in November, at least in Animal Crossing New Leaf, that was when mushrooms would pop up all over the place. So there's nothing all too new here other than in regards to what you can necessarily craft with, and seasons just look the same as ever. Just like with Animal Crossing New Leaf, instead of starting with a house, you start with a tent that you get to choose the location for. But it also seems like the locations that buildings can be put has been expanded quite a bit, which is great. Because in New Leaf, players would be restricted by things like, I don't know, that's pretty close to the river. You can't put that there. That's right by a cliff. When they were trying to place their home, or if they were trying to place public works projects. So to me, this is a welcome change. If I want to live on the edge and I want to live on a cliff, I'm going to live on the edge and live on a literal cliff edge. But a feature related to that I'm torn on is the ability to choose where villagers live. Which this is one of those features that everyone loved because they're like, oh my goodness, now they can't ruin my perfect flower patch or my perfect layouts here. But I am torn on it. Obviously I see that utility, that's great. But the way I view Animal Crossing, at least, is that it is not an ultimate customization game. And I think that's a lot of what people want it to be, is basically playing with dolls and getting to make everything yourself. Which I can see why they think it, and it's not necessarily that it's wrong. That's not how I view the game. And I view it with the desire that these animals, since they are living creatures, they're not real living creatures, but they're living creatures in the game, they should have their own agency and be able to decide where they want to live. If I get to decide where I want to live, they should get to decide where they want to live, right? And I get that people get whiny about but my flowers or my paths, but that's just not something that I have the time to care about. Maybe if it was something like there were stumps with icons on them when you chopped down the tree, chopped down trees, you could find those with a Triforce on it, or with I don't know if there were squares, but I'm pretty sure there were triangles. And the only reason I would be upset about losing those is because you get more fancy mushrooms to grow around them that are more expensive. But like I said, otherwise I don't care. It's not that important to me. I have never thought that much about the layout. I just kind of put flowers wherever, and then if I put other ones around it, they just grow way, way out. And because I like my town to be as natural as it can be, and that includes letting islanders have their own agency to pick where they live, unless the game is going to force me to pick where they live, in which case, to me, that's just even more annoying because that just doesn't mesh with how I view Animal Crossing. And that's okay. That's just how I see the game. And if other people want it to be this ultimate customization game, that's okay, but that just doesn't appeal to me. The next thing discussed in the video was the resident services tent, and it allows you to do things like sell and buy goods, get advice on how to live on the island, and of course use the DIY table, the crafting table, and you're going to need to find DIY recipes and get materials like ore from rocks, wood from trees. There are going to be some DIY customization workshops that let you change the color of your furniture. This is a feature in Animal Crossing New Leaf, but it was expanded in Animal Crossing Happy Home Designer, because in New Leaf you could go to retail and take items to Cyrus, and for a few thousand bells you would get it given back to you in a different color. Great. Now you just get to do that, but instantly. And I think you have a little bit more leeway on how things are recolored, because in New Leaf it was like you can either get all of these colors in one. Like I had the stripe set. I don't know. I started the game. For whatever reason, I got a whole lot of stripe items in my shop. And then when I got the carpet and the wallpaper for it and realized it was in black and white, when all of the items otherwise initially come in blue and white, I took them all to Cyrus and got them turned gray. But now it seems like you're going to have a little bit more leeway to choose, like, well, maybe instead I want blue and gray, for example. I don't know. I haven't seen the stripe set in the game. I'm just putting that out there as a hypothetical. The next facility discussed was the airport. Of course, when you start the game, you started at the airport because that's how you get to the island. But it also lets you travel to other players' islands and also open your island up for multiplayer. Players can travel to each other's islands via local wireless play and online play. Up to 8 players can be on an island at once through either type of play and by playing on the same console. And the airport also seems to be the place, or seems to be like the post office of the game, I should say. Because you can send postcards to your villagers, not unlike the letters from previous games. And this actually gets into a bigger underlying point about New Horizons that's unclear, which is what has happened to a bunch of the special characters. Because with things like the autosave capability, you don't have a need for Mr. Rossetti, but don't worry, we do know what he's up to, and I will discuss that later. But if we send, in this example, right, if we send postcards at the airport, then is there no post office? Is there no Pete? Is there no Pelly? Is there no Phyllis? Phyllis is my favorite one. I say semi-sarcastically. I mean, she is my favorite, but I know that she's obviously a mean, rude pelican, unlike Pete and Pelly. But that's what makes her funny. And if like they're not, I mean, if the post office doesn't exist, what are they doing? Are they even in the game at all? Will their amiibo cards have any functionality? I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I'll talk about that later. Next, the presentation discusses the Nook Inc. special services. The first special service is something that we've known since E3, which is the Nook phone. This phone comes with a bunch of apps that let you do certain functions, like you can take pictures with it. You can look at your DIY recipes, check on your Nook miles, which is the next thing I will discuss. And then they discuss the very Splatoon-like daily broadcast that Tom Nook reads to the island, which makes sense because the team that developed the team that develops Animal Crossing is also the Splatoon team, so of course they're going to add that to the game. And this daily broadcast is likely how you find out about things like the bug off and the fishing tourney, and it's like, hey guys, it's this holiday, isn't that great? Third service are the aforementioned Nook Miles. So Nook Miles are like tiny bite-sized goals that you get. And these can be daily goals, they can be long-term goals that net you miles. And these miles can be exchanged to pay off your getaway package and later to receive items from the Nook Miles terminal. And to be honest, I don't really like it. So if you'll remember, when Animal Crossing New Leaf got the Welcome Amiibo update, they added a campground where villagers would bring their RVs, and you could get goods there from Harvey, who's the dog that runs the campground. Get it? Harvey, RV. And he had this new currency called Meow Coupons. And the way that you got Meow Coupons was basically the same sort of system. Each day and each week, you had goals to complete that would grant you Meow Coupons that you could receive from a terminal just outside the town hall. And, well, it was a harmless addition, right? And it's not, I didn't care. It really didn't add anything to the experience for me because, most of the time, if I happened to complete a Meow coupon goal, it was a complete accident. I was like, oh, I did this thing for a Meow coupon. Great. I guess I'll get it. But I wasn't, going out of my way every day to be like, all right, now I gotta look at my Meow coupon goals so I can get my Meow coupons, because it didn't really add anything to the experience for me. And part of that is, and again, this comes down to my view of Animal Crossing too, to me, Animal Crossing is not about having little goals. It's in this perfect spot between a game like Minecraft, which is also a game I don't particularly like, but we can go over that another day. Because the thing about Minecraft is, you have to make every single goal. And I need some form of goal in the game. I need to know that I'm building toward something. I can't just out of the blue be like, I'm gonna build a house, I guess, because that sort of thing just doesn't occur to me, right? It just seems like aimless exploration. But it's also not, on the other extreme, linear, goal is obvious to you sort of game, like a 2D Mario game, where it's okay, I'll get to the end. Yay! Because in past Animal Crossing games, you still had goals, but they were big goals that you could figure out how to complete. So this is something like, okay, I need to pay off my house. That is a concrete goal, but how you get there is totally unique to your playtime. So you then need to make your own mini goals, like, I'm going to catch this number of rare bugs or plant this many fruit trees so I can sell fruit from them each day to make money, right? You even have big goals like, I'm going to finish the encyclopedia. I'm going to fill the museum with all the fossils or something. But those are big goals that you will figure out. And, you'll probably have some luck to need to do them. And it's not as simple as, catch this many fish today. Catch this many fish in total overall, right? And then you'll gain a few points for it. So even though I think Nook Miles will be this harmless addition, and there's going to be tons of people who get all sorts of use out of it, and they're going to love it, at least for the way I play Animal Crossing, it takes away some of that spirit, because the way I see it, Animal Crossing is supposed to be about making your own experience with these animal friends who live in town with you. And if that just so happens to mean that I want to go out and catch 15 bugs, and there are 15 different bugs, it shouldn't be because I wanted to get points for it so I can get more things. It should be about the intrinsic reward that, all right, I did this. I feel good for doing this. That being said, there's still definitely some rewards, some rewards that I like that I'm going to use, like the wheel that lets you instantly change tools. That is a reward I'm getting. But even if I like the rewards, I still don't care for a system that tries to make Animal Crossing a more directed experience, when you should make your own goals, like your own little goals, out of the big goals that are given to you. Again, at least that's how I see it. I don't think most people see it that way, and that's fine. And like I said earlier, if I end up loving that, I will let everyone know, and I'll be like, I was wrong. Let's see, what is next? I've already gone through 7-ish pages of this, and we're at about an hour in of audio. So I don't even think I'm through the first part of these notes, the first part of the presentation. So the next thing that they discuss then is some first-timer advice for living on a deserted island. And the video actually, like, the direct makes a funny bit about how it's like, you're gonna find some dangerous creatures, which while they can harm your villager, like the wasps, you don't actually die. You just pass out from getting stung more than once. And I'm pretty sure, like, that bit was more so to point out, like, the extent of bugs and fish you can find. Plus, you're always supposed to just buy medicine. It's been in the standard of Animal Crossing, pretty sure since the first game. Though, in the past, you would also lose your bee sting if you just saved and restarted your game, but I don't know if that's returning. I can't think of why it wouldn't, but if it doesn't, whatever. But one benefit out of seeing that bit is that we get to see how purchasing items is going to work in the game, at least at the very start. Timmy and Tommy have a menu of items that players can buy, including tools, flower seeds, and medicine. But there's also another row below that we don't really get to see the items of, but pretty soon here, we'll know exactly what it is. So for me, it's like, it's great. Still have the option to buy tools if you're not really into crafting, which, at least as of right now, I don't care about crafting. There's a reason I never played Zelda Breath of the Wild, because I don't like to craft. Whether that's another reason why I don't like Minecraft. I just brought that up. It's because I don't care for crafting. Especially because in the case of Minecraft, you have no idea how to craft them. But it seems like in more recent updates, they've been more clear about that. And in New Horizons, you're going to have the DIY recipes, so it's going to be clear. But honestly, I just want to buy the tools, because that's how it's always been done. It's simpler, it's easier. That's what I like. But that's the only other... The caveat to that is you might only be able to buy the basic tools. So I really want to see how far I can go with, like, the traditional Animal Crossing options before I have to, like, use some of the new features that I'm kind of wary of. But, just see what happens. We also hear a bit about nighttime and how scary it is. But all we get as the audience is to see Wisps return, not for Amiibo, which is important because we'll discuss Amiibo later. After that, we get to see Gulliver's return, and like in past games, Gulliver washes up on the beach. In Wild World and City Folk, though, you would shoot down a spaceship with your slingshot, and then you'd wake him up, and he'd ask you a question about the last place he traveled to, because he can't remember where it was. He has lost his memory. You'd get like a hint in things he said, and then you'd guess a country in the real world, and then a day later, you would receive an item from the mail from that country, and it's usually a mini version of the landmark from there. In New Horizons, however, you're going to go around and look for parts to his communicator, which seems like it's just a Nook phone. But you'll probably still get the same sorts of rewards from him, which is just like, hey, thanks for helping me get my communicator parts. Here's an item from this country I went to. You're a real pal. Then we get to hear about the rescue service, which is basically just a fast travel system, which you can also use if you get lost, if that's even possible, and if you somehow get stuck, and it is helmed by none other than the great, legendary, he made young children cry, Sonny Rossetti. So in other words, Rossetti is no longer at the helm of the Reset Surveillance Center, because of the autosave, and as evidence from the fact that the icon for the helicopter looks just like his face, and that the operator talks in like the same sort of way Rossetti talks, with like some yelling, but also some like quieter times. Plus, the music that plays when a player is being picked up is the Rossetti theme. So he is our rescue service, and I am excited if I ever need to use it. I want to go over some of the optional extras that the presentation discussed. So the first optional extra I would not call an extra so much as an obvious form of progression, because just like in Animal Crossing New Leaf, you will upgrade from a tent to a full-blown house and be able to add rooms and upstairs and a basement. And not to mention, like, it seems you're going to be able to put any items you don't want to keep out in storage, which is just the logical conclusion of the secret storage room upgrade from the Welcome Amiibo update to New Leaf. How exactly you get items out of storage is unclear because they never showed that off. But hey, more storage, more places to put stuff. I love that. It also seems like the home designer from Happy Home Designer and from the Welcome Amiibo update is also returning, but with adjustments to work on a Nintendo Switch because you don't have a bottom screen to have like a layout of your house to put things on. But one major change to it, though, is with walls. So in New Leaf, you could finally first hang items onto walls in the first place, but you're limited that you only have like one line in which everything could be hung on. So even if you had something that appeared like it was higher up on the wall, you couldn't hang something else below it. But in New Horizons, you can do that, which is great, because I quite enjoyed hanging things on walls, and being able to put things above and below it is helpful, especially because I'm an Animal Crossing hoarder. But at the same time, it also seems like there are no ceiling items as there were in Happy Home Designer. In Happy Home Designer, there were things like there were these paper lights, and there were ceiling fans. Those things don't seem to be in New Horizons, but we could be wrong. We might have just not seen them yet. The next extra comes in the form of the Nook Miles ticket. These tickets allow you to travel on island tours. They basically just seem to generate a random island for you to travel to get supplies from that might not be on your island. The key reason I think most people would want to travel would be to get new fruit. And there also may be villagers on that island that you can convince to move to your island, which I think is interesting. And I do like that they take the Tortimer Island concept from New Leaf and make it different every time, because that was the only flaw with Tortimer Island to me, was that, you know, you had one island, it was the same island, but if you went to someone, like if you went to a friend's town and went to their island, it would be different. So like, you just weren't used to you would get used to your layout, and then that gets kind of boring. I will kind of miss the tour games, though. I did like that from New Leaf, and there's no indication that they're coming back. The next extra is a bonus app for your Nook phone that you get if more than one player lives on the island. So up to 8 players can have accounts on the same island, and with the Party Play app, you can initiate local play on the same console, with one player as the leader who directs the camera to like follow them around, because it's a 3D game, so it has a camera, while everyone else just has to follow the leader's whims. But this leader can be changed in the middle of play, which lets the players take turns doing things like selling items to the Nooklings, and just pretty much anything that brings up a menu is under the power of the leader. Also of note, any items that followers pick up, like fish and bugs, are stored in a recycle box that they need to go pick up. So if you plan on playing with your little siblings, for example, you better make sure they know this, that no item gets left behind, and then you have crying little brothers and sisters and cousins later on. And while this next thing is still an optional extra, to me, this is worthy of its own discussion. The Nintendo Switch Online app will have its own Animal Crossing New Horizons specific services, just like how there is a Splatoon 2 service and a Super Smash Bros. Ultimate service. The Nook Link service is the way that you can scan QR code patterns into the game, which to me, I just want to point out, that is like a fun and unique way of getting around the fact that the Switch doesn't have a camera. It's like this weird sort of, it's a form of metagaming. I don't know if that's a term that's used in other contexts, and if it means something else in other contexts, but what I mean by this as metagaming is that you are taking a real world object and using it for your game, which is awesome. It's like it looks like using the Nook phone in the real world. And honestly, I'll likely do a whole segment on Switch Online and the app another time, but as much as it shouldn't have to be a thing, I legitimately think that of any use, this QR code scanning is a good use for it. Switch Online app will also act as like another option for the keyboard that you would separately have to pull up to chat with in New Leaf. It is still an option in-game, but on Switch, unless you use the touchscreen in handheld mode, it's going to be a lot more clunky because you have to go around with an icon and do the old hunt and peck method, basically. And of course, everyone's favorite form of voice chat will also be available. So at this point in the presentation, part 1 ended. So yes, this probably 20-30 minutes that I've talked here is only about part 1. That's something that I should have established earlier, is that this presentation was in 3 parts. Part 1 going over things we already knew about and expanding on them, although they obviously also talked about a whole lot of new things. Part 2 was entirely new info, and Part 3 was FAQ. The next topic of discussion was about how new villagers will come to your island. So much like with the starting villagers, you get to pick a plot which will be developed for that villager. So you don't get to pick where the villager puts their tent. You get to scout out a plot of land and be like, a house can go here. Now I already went over what I think about the whole you have to pick where villagers live earlier on in this segment. But logistically, I feel like this at least makes more sense. Because this is just like how houses are built in real life. A plot is picked, a house is built, and someone moves in. I still actually prefer the old system, but I'm not going to get curmudgeonly about that again, because I already did that earlier, and I'm sure a bunch of people who choose to watch this will be angry at me about it. And then also additional facilities that have been staples are going to return, like the Able Sisters, clothing shop, Nook's Cranny, and the museum, and you get to decide where those go as well. Speaking of the museum, I have the same commentary that I'm sure you've heard a million times already in a bunch of other YouTube videos. I like the expanded new look of the museum with things like a river in the bug section. But I really want to know what's up with paintings in Crazy Red. Are they returning? Are they not returning? No one knows. And that would be great, because if I don't have to collect art, honestly, I'd be way happier, because art is the only thing that's this is impossible to do when I was playing New Leaf. That's how I felt. When discussing Nook's Cranny, the narrator mentions how it will have items that you can't craft yourself, which makes sense, because, Nook's Cranny is an Animal Crossing staple, and as much as I know how people love crafting in games, you can't craft everything. There has to be some things you buy, otherwise it's not really Animal Crossing, at least to me. They just kind of glossed over the Able Sisters, but I do like the info that has come out about the Able Sisters since this presentation. There's this wardrobe area on the right of the store that lets you buy any item on display that day in all of the colors that it comes in, which is a super welcome improvement over having to buy, I'm going to buy the red bar shirt, and now I'm going to buy the green bar shirt. I can just buy, insert color here, bar shirt that I want right away, for example. They talked about the campsite, which is not the same as Harvey's campground in New Leaf. These are different things. The campsite is returning, which lets one villager come to camp that you can convince to move in. It's basically like a temporary house, so to speak. And it's basically unchanged as far as I can see from New Leaf. Resident Services is going to expand from a tent to a town hall-like building. And you know what that means. That's where you're going to find Isabel. So Isabel lets you do the traditional town hall things, like change your town tune, change the flag, get an evaluation of the island. But it's also where you get to make changes to your house and move facilities if you don't like where they are anymore. Resident Services is also going to act like a kind of like a plaza of sorts. I'm going to get to see Label / Labelle, Harvey, and Celeste in the footage. But odds are this is where you're going to find, like, Katrina the fortune teller. Maybe Gracie the giraffe is going to show up for Gracie Grace. We don't know yet. We haven't seen anything of her. And this is where you're going to experience holidays like American Thanksgiving, Easter. Well, it's Bunny Day in the game, I should say. We also see fishing tourneys and the bug off held there. Remember, I talked about Celeste. Celeste also specifically mentions a wand, and then we see footage of a wand that lets you change into certain themed outfits. And I really want to know more about this because it's so, like, mysterious. It's just like, it's all nonchalantly brought up, like Celeste is there talking like, what if you had a magic wand? And then we see it, and it's like this circle of outfits. And I want to know more, right? It just piqued my curiosity. Like I said, there's also traveling merchants around, like Sahara, the carpet and wallpaper camel. You'll see Kix, the shoe-selling skunk, and the new Daisy May, the turnip-selling hog. But what happened to Joan? The lady who used to sell turnips for more than 60 morns. Guess we don't know what's happening with her. Hopefully she's not, like, dead, but we have had at least one character die in the series, Frillard. When it comes to holidays, though, I talked about holidays a little bit. The narrator does talk about free updates being part of that, and I don't really know what to think about that. I don't know if that means, like, the holidays aren't ready and in the game, or if their plan is to change how holidays work each year or something. It's kind of intriguing in the sense that I just want to know the answer, but I can't think of why they necessarily need to do updates for these. But whatever, if it's fine, I guess it's fine. In the next clip, we get to see a brief bit about new travel tools, like the pole vault and the ladder that lets you directly climb up cliffs, which are also two very welcome features to me. At the same time, of course, I still want to, like, build bridges, and I'm probably going to use those more because I don't really care to switch tools all the time, even if I'm going to have that circle, all right? Speaking of bridges, we also get to see the bridge options, and there are these new staircase options to make getting across these rivers and up to new heights even easier without having to use the tool. And that actually gets into the next new addition, the big one that people were probably the most in love with, that I, at least currently, still do not care for. You can terraform the island using the Island Designer. So this feature lets you pave paths, which to me are one of the most overrated things to do in Animal Crossing, because people make a huge deal out about, like, I have to have the most perfectly designed town. But I could not care. This is not SimCity. This is Animal Crossing. If I wanted to design a city, I would play SimCity. And I like the more natural aesthetic that comes with having that comes without having paths and, like, rows of trees and flowers. I just want, like, trees to pop up wherever and to have flowers kind of go all over the place. Because this is a deserted island. This is a little remote town. This isn't, like, I think of it, it doesn't really make a ton of sense, but it's almost like an 1800s type town where it's like these things aren't necessarily orderly. I want it to be natural. And I get that some people, like, they love it, but to me it's just, like, needless customization. Like, I just want some things to be how they are, and that includes, like, the basic grassy layout. I mean, to be fair, though, I do like some of the uses you can get out of it. I'm not saying I will never use it. I'm not saying it has no uses. Like, they show a makeshift playground in the footage where the player, like, made this area of sand and they put toys in it. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cute. That's a neat little thing you can do with it. So it's not like that I'll never ever use this, that it's a totally worthless feature. But I think that the culture in the Animal Crossing community that's led to this feature isn't one that I just buy into. To me, it just, I don't care about all that customization. It's not that important to me. But the bigger features with an E are the landscaping and the waterscaping. So with waterscaping, you can create land where there was once a river. But my problem with this is that it basically makes building bridges and staircases completely moot. I understand that all these features have to be unlocked before you can waterscape and landscape, but like, what incentive do I have after I get the ability to like just make a path of land or to make a river somewhere and just magically materialize it? Like, what incentive do I have to spend bells on building a bridge when I could just materialize this path out of the air for free? I mean, there's also just some decorating you can do, like making a waterfall. But to me, like I said, that's just all superfluous. It's not to say I won't use it, not to say I won't try it. And if I end up falling in love with it, I will certainly come back here and admit it. But as it stands at this current moment, I think it's just pandering to the super fan, which is not necessarily a bad thing. You know, and in fact, like as a political scientist here, I think it's probably the best thing Nintendo could do, but I just personally don't really care for the idea because I think it leads to too much customization, too much power to the player. Like, there has to be some sort of guideline that the players have to meet. Like, there has to be something that they're structured around. It's not the same as a goal. It's just some sort of structure that they have. But I think that should cover the entire second section, which means we are in the home stretch here. We're almost done with this topic, and then we can go on to topics 3 and 4. Alright, and quick before we get restarted and getting into the home stretch of this portion, I just want to give the disclosure that, yes, the battery died in the camera, and now I simply swapped it out for the other battery that was fully charged. I mean, it was charging while I was recording this, but at the time it finally got to being fully charged. So if anything seems off for my visual viewers, that is why. But I know this has been a long segment. We're almost there. And then when it comes to the FAQs, I only really want to go over the interesting stuff. Of course, when I took notes, I noted pretty much everything, but, you know, stuff like how up to 8 players share one island. Not all that interesting to me, because we already kind of talked about that with the party play feature. But of course I understand the concerns that people have with having multiple people share the same one island. But that can be a topic for another time if like, you know, when the game comes out, people end up having a bunch of problems with that. So, what are some FAQs? Animal Crossing New Horizons does support Amiibo! Yeah! So, the Animal Crossing Amiibo figures and the cards are compatible with New Horizons, but it appears that the functionality is pretty much the same as in New Leaf when it comes to, like, your normal villagers that are on the cards. Like, you scan it. In this case, I think it's at the Nook Miles terminal. Could be at a different terminal, but that's what it looked like in the footage. You know, you scan it, and they're like, hey, that looks like a bunny. They use bunny in the footage. It's like, that looks like a Goldie amiibo. Do you want Goldie to come visit your town? And then you can be like, hey, Goldie, welcome to my town. Would you move in? And she'll be like, yeah, I would love to move in. What exactly happens with special villagers in terms of like figures and cards isn't all too clear yet. Amiibo are also usable in the Photopia side mode, where you get to dress up villagers for photo shoots. Neat! When it comes to friends coming to your island, you can open up the island to any friend, or set it so that your friends must know the dodo code to get on the island, which should be helpful to make sure that only certain friends that you want coming to your island can come. For whatever reason. If you're just like, you know, I want a play date with only this person, they just tell them the code, they can come to the island, and then someone else who happens to be playing can't go to the island. Furthermore, friends must be on your best friends list, which is on that Nook link, remember, from the Switch Online app, before they can use certain tools on your island, like axes and shovels, which I'm sure will make problems in that you'll get friends who are like, what the heck, man? Why am I not on your best friends list? I'm best friend. You can trust me with shovels. And then, meanwhile, if you let them do that, if you know in the back of your mind, if you let them do that, they're going to bury a pitfall seed somewhere, and then you're going to get pranked by them. Let's see. The status on save data loss is still confusing. So, as we've known for a while, Animal Crossing New Horizons does not support the save data cloud backup feature of Nintendo Switch Online to prevent any time traveling shenanigans. What? I mean, like I said this earlier, this is the same team that did Splatoon 2, and wouldn't you know it, Splatoon 2 also doesn't support save data cloud backup, in their case, because they don't want, cheating happening, and, I get it, but what is it? Why is it this same team has made 2 games, it doesn't utilize the save data cloud backup? Come on, guys, it isn't that terrible, I get it, but, come on, it's not that important. Because, obviously, I would much prefer that it supports the cloud backup, but it seems like it not supporting cloud backup is set in stone. But it seems like there's going to be a service for recovering backed up data or save data on some kind of server, but what exactly that's going to look like isn't certain. At first, there was a note at the bottom of the video saying that it would be one time only, but that note has changed. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen with it. Hopefully everything will be okay. But I would just rather have the save data cloud backup because we're paying money for that Switch Online service, and that'll be much easier. I mean, obviously, it would be great if save data cloud backup was just available to everyone, which it should be, but whatever. That is what it is right now. There are going to be free holiday updates throughout the year, like I noted, including a Day 1 update that allows players to celebrate Bunny Day a few weeks later, otherwise known as Easter in the real world. And there will also be a special offer for special items between Animal Crossing New Horizons and the mobile Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, which as of recording, I'm pretty sure that just started today, March 12th. So look at me being topically relevant for a change. But you know what? I think we did it. We finally covered every little piece of information from the Animal Crossing New Horizons Direct. We are 8 days. When you see this, it might be less than 7 days away from the game releasing, so the lid is going to be blown off of all this information. Like I said, I'm excited, but I'm also cautious about some of these changes. Like I said with this segment, even though it's not newsily relevant necessarily by the time it comes out, just think of this as my preview, not a pre-review, a preview of the game. But hopefully when the game does come out, I can give some kind of review. I can't say it enough. If I'm wrong about all of these things and I'm I don't know about that, I will certainly be okay with letting you know because I'm an adult. And it's a video game, and I can certainly be wrong. Otherwise, we are finally done with topic 2. Time to move on to the more personal topic number 3 today. All right. So one thing that I enjoyed doing in the last podcast was telling a personal story. Obviously, it wasn't much of a deep personal story, but it was at least, an interesting and I'm hoping relatable personal story for us gamers, I'd hope, especially collecting type of gamers who like special consoles, because, need I remind you, scalping is BS. It's terrible. I hate it. Never be a scalper. If there's anything you learn from this podcast, audience, never scalp, because it makes you a terrible person. It's flat out, just makes you terrible. Not quite as bad as a murderer, but, worse than a jaywalker. Well, this time I Would also like to tell a personal story, and I would like to mix the top two things in my everyday life, which are gaming and being here at college, at least for as long as I'm going to keep being here because of pandemic diseases. Now, I feel like I speak for everyone when I say that playing games online is fun. I mean, sure, there are some hiccups, and people can be big jerks online, and that can make people not want to play online, which sucks, but it's sad. But I would say, broadly speaking, the concept, at least, of playing a game online is a great idea. And even with those hiccups, especially in my case with the Switch, don't worry, this is not the Switch Online segment that I was saying I would do some other time, but rather I just want to talk about the problems that I have been facing here trying to play my Nintendo Switch Online, because it's been a real pain. So now, if you didn't know this, the way that Nintendo codes for the online aspects of their games is by making what's called a peer-to-peer connection. So what this means is that when you go online to play a game of Smash Brothers, right, you are literally connecting to the other player systems. And that's the way that they've done online connectivity as far back as the Wii and the DS. So that's also why if you get with a group online, Smash Brothers Brawl was infamous for having terrible lag, and it's gotten better with each entry, but you'll still, look at Super Mario Maker 2. That game is terrible to play online, all because one player's connection isn't all that great, because Nintendo is using a peer-to-peer connection, whereas a lot of modern online games employ dedicated servers. So when you want to play, you connect to a server, and then you get matched up with other players. So the internet connection is mostly handled by the server instead of on your side, so connections tend to be better. And sure, you'll still run into some laggy matches, and you'll have players who drop out, but it's much less frequent with dedicated servers. Now here's the problem with trying to play online games in college for me. My university's internet does not allow for peer-to-peer connections. So that means the vast majority of online-enabled games that I own, I can't play online. So Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, probably the two games you want to play online the most if you're a Nintendo player like me. Even something like Puyo Puyo Tetris. Great puzzle game, by the way. I'd love to talk about that another time. But I'm getting off track. Those are three games that I just can't play online. There's other ones, like I can't play ARMS. I've been playing a lot of ARMS lately. I don't know, I've just been in the mood. I have had a couple of games work online. If you'll remember, if you can think back, probably an hour and 10 minutes ago. If you're watching the whole podcast, I talked about Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. I have had that game work, which is great because otherwise that would have been even worse trying to get through the Grand Prix, and they were already a huge pain, even with being able to play online. I can play Tetris 99 online, or whatever. I don't know what's different about Tetris 99 compared to Puyo Puyo Tetris or Smash Brothers, but it works. So at least those are a couple of games that I can play online. But why would I want to play those two games in particular all the time? I want to play those games that I mentioned. I want to play Mario Kart online. I want to play Smash Brothers. I want to play ARMS. I want to play Puyo Puyo Tetris, right? I want to play CTR and I want to play Tetris 99 online, but I want to play more than just that. And it sucks. It's not fun. And I paid good money for the games, right? Paid $60 for Mario Kart. I paid $60 for ARMS and for Smash Brothers. I paid $40. No, it might be $30 or $40 for Puyo Puyo Tetris. And now I'm paying $20 a year to have an online service. And I can't use it in most of my games. And, probably the thing that sucks the most for me is that I am not really sure who to be upset with here, right? Because there's problems on both ends with this. On the one hand, you have Nintendo, who isn't using a modern form of online play, because they're still doing peer-to-peer connections, which are just old and outdated. We really should have moved on to dedicated servers as far back as like Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, but they still haven't done so. But on the other hand, you also have my college here, just not flat out not allowing peer-to-peer connections. Like, I've been once in a great moon been able to get through one game of Smash Brothers, but otherwise I haven't been able to, because the connections aren't able to happen on here. And this is obviously something I've thought about for a while, which is part of why this segment is going to be so short, especially compared to the prior monstrously long segment. To really boil down my thoughts, and the conclusion that I've come to is that I'm just mad at both of them. Because I don't have control over either of these entities, so I'm just going to be upset at both, right? I can't change what Nintendo does. I mean, I can through consumer feedback, but like I don't know what to do. They've been doing this for years, and they still haven't changed it. And I can't really change what the university does, because I don't get to make the tech policy. So I'm just going to be upset at both, and they can annoy me until I inevitably get my own place, and then all will be right in the world once again as a gamer who plays online. So, viewers, I'm going to do some engagement baiting here. I want to know what kinds of limitations you might have had or currently have in college that you don't like. I'm really curious about some of those past limitations, because, I mean, college was super different even 20 years ago compared, 20 years ago in 2000. God, 30 years ago now is the mid-90s, so I'm sure there were very different limitations that you had that made college not as enjoyable as it could have been. But I also want to hear about some modern limitations that are just things that like I don't think of, because they're just some things that I choose not to do that don't interest me. So yeah, let me know. And then I am ready to finally move on to the last topic of this podcast. An hour and 40 minutes in, basically. I will start that up next. All right, and now we have the final topic. So I've always been quite the cartoon connoisseur, I would say. I mean, I say that as if I've seen tons and tons and tons of cartoons, and though I've seen many, I certainly can't say I've seen them all. But I do quite enjoy a bunch of the classics that are like required cartoon viewing, if you're gonna say you enjoy cartoons. Now, in this case, I want to do a retrospective on my time with one of those cartoon series to me that are required viewing, and that is Looney Tunes. So those are the classic Warner Brothers cartoons starring characters like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Elmer Fudd, Tweety Taz, and like, I can't list them all, because that'll just be a waste of a bunch of time, and we're already looking at the longest podcast I've ever made. But you get the idea. Like, if you look at any picture, you'll see like a compilation of them. You'll be like, oh yeah, I know that. Now, I was born in the year 2000, so I obviously missed all these cartoons coming out. But I did get to see them after the fact through channels like Boomerang. That's another topic that I think would be fun to do one day. The Boomerang retrospective, which might be also a Hanna-Barbera retrospective, because that's the channel that I watched the most when I was a kid. I watched most of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, but I digress. So, I've been watching Looney Tunes shorts on Boomerang, and from the Looney Tunes Golden Collection series that I've been collecting since around like 2005 or 6 or so. And I distinctly remember getting the first collection. It was the rare gift from my grandfather on my dad's side. He's always been more of a money person for birthdays and Christmas, so actually getting a gift from him, I mean, the same was true about my uncle that from the same side of the family that I talked about in the first episode of this podcast. It was a special thing, regardless. That collection is probably the way I watched the cartoons for the most part. The first collection had a Bugs Bunny disc, it had a Daffy Duck disc, And then the last two discs are like a mishmash of like different characters. And I remember like I looked at the list of the cartoons before this, and like I mean, just looking at even the first disc, right? The Bugs disc is that one's probably my favorite because it's got a whole list of cartoons. I mean, Rabbit Seasoning is a great Bugs, Daffy, and Elmer short. I'm pretty sure they're called like the Hunting Trilogy. Rabbit apostrophe S kin, not rabbit skin, but rabbit's kin, with Pete Puma. His like only appearance in the classic shorts is one of my personal favorites. I love the way that he talks, and he's just so dumb. Oh, yeah, how many lumps do you want? Oh, 3 or 4. And then Bugs hits him on the head with a man like. It's funny. And then another one, looking at the first disc, there's Big House Bunny. So in that cartoon, Bugs gets thrown in prison, and he messes around. So then you have Yosemite Sam as the prison guard named Schultz. And he just has like one of my favorite recurring jokes throughout is the warden of the prison. It's like whenever Yosemite Sam screws something up, the warden always yells because he named Schultz. He's like, Schultz, office. I can't. I would yell it here, but that would be terrible for the audio mixing, and I don't want to. I'm sure I already seem like a crazy person because I probably sound like I'm just talking to myself, but I'm really doing this wonderful podcast here to my neighbors. But that's one of my favorite jokes in the cartoon. The Daffy Duck disc also has some pretty good cartoons. Duck-a-Muck, all-time classic. Where Daffy is harassed by the animator, like he gets his whole body erased and then replaced with like he's got like a flower head and this weird like body, and he's on 4 legs and he's got a flag on his tail. That's great. If you haven't watched it, stop, go watch it. Go watch it right now. It is that much of a classic. Another one on the disc that I love is The Ducksters. And in that cartoon, Porky Pig goes on a radio game show because, it's 1950, so they're on the radio. And Daffy is an antagonizing host where he does things like we literally open the cartoon where Porky is on a conveyor belt and going toward a buzzsaw, which is scary if it were real life, but funny because it's a cartoon. Yeah, the phrase that I think of when I think of that cartoon. It's like Daffy being, "Oh, I'm sorry. You must pay the penalty." Well, actually, I guess looking at the list more, it was really more of a Daffy and Porky disc, because there's also like one of them on here is Porky Chops, which is about Porky Pig trying to chop down a tree that a squirrel lives in, but the squirrel keeps making it so Porky can't chop down the tree. That's a pretty good one. The third disc, so we're getting into one of the mishmash kinds of discs. It's got a few good ones. There's Fast and Furious. Furry being the word furry, like a cat or a dog, -os, which is the one Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner cartoon of the bunch. Those are always great. They're all silent, which was something that I didn't really like so much as a kid, but the physical humor is good enough to make up for that. There's For Sentimental Reasons, scent being scent like smell, scent, -IMENTAL. That's the one Pepe Le Pew cartoon, which, I mean, it is honestly kind of hard going back to watch Pepe after having lived for 19 years, and learning about things like pickup culture. I mean, it is a harmless cartoon. I don't really care that much, but I also think you could definitely argue some of the social angle is there with it. The fourth disc has a couple of good, Sylvester and Tweety cartoons. There's Canary Row, and then there's Tweety's SOS, which, let me make sure I'm thinking of the right cartoon before I make this particular description of it. Yeah, okay, so that's the one, my favorite joke in it, and they use this in the marketing. It's Tweety draws a picture of a ship on the sea, because they're, Tweety and Sylvester and Granny are on a cruise ship, and like Tweety draws a ship, and he's like telling the story about how he's like the ship is going back and forth, and oh, it's so wavy, and showing the, like tilting the picture like that, which gets Sylvester to turn green and like literally turn green and get all seasick. That's funny. Oh, there's the Foghorn Leghorn, which I should give special mention to because he's one of my personal favorite characters. I say he's one of my favorite characters. And while I could certainly go over all of the collections and discuss cartoons from each disc, I think you get the picture. Like, I like the cartoons. They all have the slapstick style, and I'm sure I'm going to return to this topic one day. Maybe I'll do like a ranking of each cartoon in these collections, or at least each disc. I would certainly enjoy reviewing some of these because they're quality, and plus each cartoon's only 7 minutes long, so like I can, I don't have to spend a ton of time reviewing one short as I would for, say, a movie. But I also, I want to talk about the versions of these characters beyond the classic shorts. Although I guess I should point out there will be one exception to this rule if I do decide to go ahead and review these, which is that when I got Volume 4, which is the last one I needed, somehow I just missed that one, it didn't come with the 4th disc, even though it was like brand new. So I can't comment on any of the cartoons on that disc, and even if I have the Spotlight collection for it too, which basically comes with the disc that I was missing, but it is missing one cartoon. Like, the Spotlight collection has every single cartoon in it for that disc, the 4th disc. I think it's like cat themed, but it's missing one cartoon. Looking beyond the classics, though, there were a few series that I got to catch on TV when I was a kid, and I just kind of want to look at those. Like, I could go back and look at, the thing about a bunch of the really old series, like the Bugs Bunny show, is it's, I've been seeing this channel, it's called Ferris Wheelhouse, with the Looney Tunes critic on it. He's called, like, these specials paste-ups, and I think that's kind of the idea. It's like a paste-up of a bunch of the old shorts, but with like little story bits in between. So like I don't really care about those. There's some other series, and I'm sure I'll like if I catch them, I'll probably talk about them. But I just want to start with the things that I have already seen as a kid. So like as a young child, and I mean a young child, like 3 years old, 4 years old, and of course it helped that I had a younger sibling too during most of its run. As I got older, I was able to watch, of all things, there was the Baby Looney Tunes, but it's nothing like the similarly named Muppet Babies. And in this cartoon, the characters acted like the characters. Like, Daffy was distinctly Daffy, at least the Chuck Jones type Daffy, but he was in diapers, and, the cartoon had a lot less dynamite. But there was also, like, some out-of-character, like, type stuff. Like, there was a baby Sylvester, but he never went after baby Tweety, which I guess makes sense because like that would not be good for the super young demographic of the show, which I was at the time when I saw it, or at least I had a sibling who's that super young demographic, so it was like the closest thing to something that both of us could enjoy, in the sense that it was like relatively similar to good Looney Tunes, and it's something that's appropriate for someone who is 2 years old. But as much as the characters were just baby-fied versions of the normal characters, I also can't say that it was not uninteresting to see characters who normally don't interact together interact. Like Sylvester and Taz. Like I mentioned Sylvester. Taz is also in it. There's a baby Taz. But it would also be more interesting to me if it was like I could see a cartoon with the adult Taz and the adult Sylvester doing their normal antics. But like I also have to say, looking at the cast, I thought it was super clever to have Granny just be Granny in it, which makes it a little weird for her to babysit a baby Sylvester and Tweety. But that's beside the point, I guess. I also have to point out how irresponsible of a babysitter she is, leaving all these highly articulate anthropomorphic animal babies by themselves. God. Let's see. It was also kind of strange. So, like, there were definitely some weird inclusions for the characters. Like, there's a baby Petunia pig, but there's no baby Porky Pig as a recurring character. And then there was also like this one. He seemed like a throwaway character, unique to the show. He's like named Floyd. I think he's Granny's nephew or something. So suffice it to say, I do remember quite a bit about this show from my childhood, even though it wasn't really all that great. And I also, I looked up some clips to make sure I knew what I was talking about before I came on here, and I was like, I think there was this thing, but I don't know for sure. Probably my favorite of the bunch of recent series, the shorts, they're older, they're in their own category. The next series, though, is Duck Dodgers, which is great. It does not include the in the 24th and a half century part that was in the original cartoon. And this, to me, this was as simple as you got it. You had Daffy as Duck Dodgers, Porky as the eager young space cadet, Marvin the Martian as the Martian commander, and then, along the way you would see like other Looney Tunes characters as needed. Like there was an episode where Elmer Fudd appears as the Mother Fudd, putting everyone under its control, which is basically to say the episode was about it turning everyone into an Elmer Fudd version of, like, every character into an Elmer Fudd version of themselves, and they would just laugh like he does, and it would just be going, during the entire episode. And I as I was looking at this to make sure, okay, it is called that, right? It is called the Mother Fudd. It's actually I learned that it's a parody of things like the Borg in Star Trek. Neat. And to me, the thing that made these episodes, like this cartoon, really good compared to other ones is that I felt like they had the proper balance of comedy and action, which is to say it was for the most part comedy. Like you had your actiony scenes, but the thing about the actiony scenes is that they were still slapstick comedy in the end, right? And it's been such a long time since I've been able to see a full episode of the show because it's not on TV anymore, and I'm not about to pay $15 to watch it on YouTube for funsies. But like for the most part, what I do remember is that the episodes are about Dodgers trying to foil whatever plot the Martian commander, Marvin, was ordered to carry out by Queen Tyranny. Nice pun there on tyranny. Queen Tyranny of Mars to conquer the Earth. But there'll also be some episodes in between where there will be other threats that come along. And ones, like there's an episode where Dodgers worked for a diner. One where he has to unfreeze metal guitarist Dave Mustaine of Megadeth. Weird, but cool. There were a couple of random K9, K-9, that's Marvin's dog. There were a couple of cartoons about him. I don't know if this is a great description of the show. I would love to watch it again, but either way, it's probably my favorite of the bunch. The next show that came out, looking at the chronology, was one that I never watched. Not necessarily because I wouldn't have been interested. Not that I can say, I don't think I would have been, but I just didn't know about the TV segment it was on, which was it was Kids WB, if I remember correctly. I just want to make sure I have, it was WB. No, wait. No, yeah, it was Kids WB. The logo it just looks kind of strange. But that's beside the point. And in that, on it, there was one Looney Tunes related show. The show after Duck Dodgers was Lunatics Unleashed, which was a show about the descendants of the Looney Tunes that somehow got superpowers and they go around and they save their city. And that's about what I just told you is about the extent I know, and I'm sure there are people who like it, but I'm gonna be honest here. That concept and looking at the art of it, it just looks kind of dumb to me. To me, these characters are supposed to be about putting a watermelon on their antagonist's head and hitting it with a mallet. They're not about saving the world, necessarily. And I mean, yeah, I talked about how Duck Dodgers was about, him saving the Earth, but it was much more about him comedically saving the Earth as opposed to, having it be even, a semi-serious action series. I mean, I would be down for watching the series to do a review of it, but that's about it. It just, I don't know. It doesn't rub me the right way, at least right now. I'm actually gonna skip one series quick here, because I want to talk about the one after Wit. Look at me, I'm sounding like Elma Fudd. I never watched the most recent series, which is Wabbit, or as it's also called, New Looney Tunes. So I don't really have much commentary on them. I have some commentary on like the stuff that that I have seen, because I've seen some clips, but I've never seen like full episodes of the show. Not a huge, oh my goodness, not a huge fan of the art style. I thought that the designs were kind of like messy, maybe sloppy is a better word. Like, I look at Bugs's design in it, and he looks so noodly is the word I think of it at. That's the word that I think of. Like, I look at his design, he's just got like these super thin noodle-like arms, and I don't like it. I mean, it's kind of like how he was in the original cartoons, but like these are just super disproportionate. And then, it's like, I get Porky is a pig, but he's like way disproportionately fat. And I mean, to be fair, in like his first cartoons in the 1930s, Porky was a little round pig, but he never looked as fat as he did in the show. It's not fat shaming, although you really should not be fat because it's not good for your health. That's beside the point. I mean, characters like Yosemite Sam looks similarly rounder than he's supposed to be. Like, he's not as bad as Porky, but like he doesn't look quite right to me. He doesn't look like Yosemite Sam to me. I did, however, see the show that came out before it, which is the next one we're going to discuss, and I quite enjoyed it, even though it's a totally different direction. That show is The Looney Tunes Show. It was a full 22-minute sitcom-like show that put the Looney Tunes in the modern world, which in theory sounds like a terrible concept. But honestly, the art style and like the spoken jokes were distinctly Looney Tunes. Like, they didn't use the classic jokes like, the anvil falling on someone's head, because that wasn't the point of the show. They didn't have it where where Wile E. Coyote fell off of the cliff. I mean, there were CG Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner segments, but I think they only show up once in the entire main series. I could be wrong on that, but I know for sure they at least show up one time. That just wasn't the point of the show. That wasn't the goal of it. And when looking at it, I just like how many new and different situations the writers could put the characters in, with them still feeling like Bugs. Like, Bugs still has that like quippy, snappy way of speaking. And it made the characters feel expanded in a way that they hadn't been before. And I might like it because, like, in that sense, it really reminds me of Duck Dodgers in that a lot of the jokes were between the characters talking, and they were new jokes rather than old jokes. And I don't know if this description makes sense, but I just enjoy it, and I would highly, highly recommend checking out the series. It's not super long. It's only like 2 seasons, if even that. I figure that the last aspect of the Looney Tunes that I want to discuss, though, are the movies, but I've only really seen a couple of them. Like, in fact, I was looking at the list of them, and I've only really seen 3 if you don't include, again, I talked about this concept of a paste-up special before. And those 3 films that I've seen are Looney Tunes, Back in Action, Bah Humduck, and Space Jam. The paste-ups, though, even though I have seen some of them, like Daffy Duck's Quackbusters. I don't really count those or that as like a movie because it's not an entirely original animation. It's mostly old cartoons put into like this context. And while that's great and all, like, it doesn't really make sense to me to call it its own thing. But these 3 movies I've seen at least once, maybe twice, depending. Well, once, maybe twice at least, multiple times depending. So Looney Tunes Back in Action was the first one I mentioned. That was one of my childhood movies, and I know that it's not a great movie. People didn't really like it all that much, Brendan Fraser's the main star, which I know people have like this weird love-hate relationship about Brendan Fraser. It's weird. But I have a lot of nostalgia for the film. It was a certain childhood movie to me, so I will always love it for that. Let's see, in the movie we get to see Bugs and Daffy, both of them played by Joe Alasky. Those, if I don't think of Mel Blanc, those are the voices that I all like. Those are to me, that is Bugs and Daffy. If it's not Mel Blanc, if it's someone else, like they can still be Bugs, it can still be Daffy, but like, I look at like D. Bradley Baker as Daffy. That ain't Daffy. It just sounds way too off to me. The voice is the character. Anyway, Bugs and Daffy follow DJ, who is Brendan Fraser's character. He's an aspiring daredevil, and then you have Kate, who is Jenna Elfman's character. She's a Warner Brothers executive. And they go on a quest to find the Blue Monkey Diamond and save DJ's father, who's played by Timothy Dalton, from Mr. Chairman of the Acme Corporation, who is played by Steve Martin. And the chairman wants to turn the whole population of the world into monkeys using the diamond other than himself and like one other guy. So you can probably kind of see why a lot of people wouldn't think the movie would be all that great, because it's not all that Looney Tunes. Like, I mean, a bunch of the characters appear in the film, and like they certainly do a bunch of the gags, but it's not like Looney Tunes are not designed to have that sort of plot. Like, they feel like they're kind of tagging along with this actual plot that's going on here, and I do think that like the pair up between Brendan Fraser's character and Jenna Elfman's character is a little bit contrived. The next one I mentioned was Bah Humduck, a Looney Tunes Christmas movie. It is it does kind of lean in that special territory, but it did come out. I feel like, if I remember correctly, it came out on DVD first, so I feel like I can call it a movie. Plus, it literally does call itself a Looney Tunes Christmas. A Looney Tunes Christmas movie. Let me check. I don't want to be. Oh, come on, new tab. I don't want to be sending out misinformation here. No, it's just Bah Humduck, a Looney Tunes Christmas. I apologize. It does not have the word movie in it. You have Joe Alasky once again playing Daffy. Again, to me, he's Daffy. If it isn't Mel Blanc, it's Joe Alasky as Daffy. But Billy West actually took back the role of Bugs. And, I mean, I'm just going to keep it short and simple. The movie's basically just a retelling of Charles Dickens' his book, A Christmas Carol. But Daffy is Ebenezer Scrooge. It's a perfectly fine Christmas special. I can't say I would want to watch it every single year as a tradition, but it's a fine movie. All the characters seem like they act like how they should act. I enjoy it. And the third movie I mentioned is Space Jam, which is actually the movie that I have the least experience with. But I know it has this sudden huge nostalgia again. But I've just never really had the desire to put it on, because it's such a strange concept. You have, on the one hand, Looney Tunes, right? Looney Tunes. You got these nice, great characters. On the other hand, you have Michael Jordan and basketball. And I get that it's based on, I want to say they're Nike commercials, but I know obviously they're the Jordans. So it might be for that, but I just want to make sure. No, yeah, they're for Nike commercials, but then I think later on they go on to be for the Air Jordan shoes. So that's how the movie came to be, because it was based on a commercial series. But it's how do you turn that into a film, a full feature-length film? And it's because of that I've never really watched it, because it's not a concept that I am all that interested in taking the time to go get like a DVD for it, or God, maybe if it's on some streaming service. Like, the only times I've ever seen it have been when it's on TV, if it just so happens to be on. And I don't have any TV service, so can't really watch it. And it's not to say that in like the 1 or 2 times I've seen it that I don't like Space Jam, but it's just I'm not super inspired to watch it again. But there is a sequel, apparently. I mean, they've been talking about this for years. There's going to be a sequel. Who knows if it's still actually going to happen. But you know what? I'll go see it. Because, I mean, as much as the premise is weird, it is unique. It does have that going for it, in that it's like, I mean, it's strange, but it can't be terrible, can it? So, yeah, that's my personal Looney Tunes retrospective. All we have to do here yet is the conclusion to this very podcast. It's been I went from the shortest episode to the longest episode. We're at 2 hours and 10 minutes instead of 1 hour and 10 minutes. Isn't that fun? So yeah, I think that's about all I have to say here today. I'm glad to see that this went on to be a long podcast, although I hope that my very long Crash Team Racing and Animal Crossing Direct segments aren't too monotonous. If they were, I apologize. That's something I can work on for the future, and something that I'm hoping that doing things like maybe getting guests and other people to talk on here can be useful to alleviate any monotony that's felt. Otherwise, as always, please do all of the typical sorts of engagement things depending on your platform. Likes, subscriptions, thumbs up if you want to get retro, all that sort of stuff. I love comments, give me feedback. I love feedback. I want to figure out how to make this podcast even better. But otherwise, yeah, I look forward to the next episode. This is Brandon Pudwill signing out for the Creative Outlet Podcast, Episode 4, and I will see you next time. Thank you.